The session today is protecting the bottom line through good DSD receiving practices. The other two sessions we gave, one was on front-end shrink prevention, the other one was on shoplifting and retail theft prevention. All have been very well received, and all, by the way, can be seen at the FMS Solutions site on YouTube. Just go to FMS Solutions when you click on YouTube, and you can look at this exact presentation and the other two as well. This presentation is basically the presentation that was given at the 2016 NGA show, DSD Receiving Best Practices. And this was put together by me. I'm the facilitator of the Loss Prevention Share Group for NGA. And you can see the companies here, Respec, Syndics, NFI. All of these guys put this presentation together, and it's best practices, what they feel are the best practices for DSD receiving. Now, there are also several takeaways in this presentation today. I'm going to be reviewing the top 10 best practices for DSD receiving, and also uploaded, and there's handouts available for a sample DSD receiving policy, a sample vendor error log, if you will, and also a sample receiving management checklist. And all these are available. I believe you can get them right there on the right-hand side of the page. It should say handouts. Should be able to click on that and download it. If you can't, please call in and let Eric know. Now, the share group at NGA is phenomenal. It's a great group of folks. But if you're not a member of NGA, there is another share group that I'm also a co-facilitator with. It's a Harold Lloyd share group called the Front Door, Back Door Share Group. It's a loss prevention share group. We have owners, we have non-LP folks, we have loss prevention folks, and both of these share groups are phenomenal, and they share information just like this. So I encourage you, whether you're a member of NGA or not, get involved in a share group. It's probably the best money you'll ever spend to help you with your operation. So to get started, I have an invoice here. You guys are going to check me in. I'm gonna have an invoice, and I want you to go through and check me in. And as I uncover numbers on a page, I know this may sound silly wherever you're at, say the numbers out loud. Say them out loud together. Ready? 1,000, 1,040, 2,040, 2,070, 3,070, 3,090, 4,090, 5,000. Okay. We went through it very quickly, and if you said 5,000, if you were counting with me and you said 5,000, I just stole from you. This is called sequential numbering, and I had control of the invoice like a vendor does. I went through the invoice because I had control of the speed and the tempo. I hurried you up, and also I counted. Let me show you what I just did. We're going to go through this again. 1,000, 1,040, 2,040, 2,070, 3,070, 3,090, 4,090, not 5,000, it's 4,100. If you said 5,000, I just stole $900 from you. Now imagine, if you will, it's Labor Day weekend, you've got 3 or 4 or 5 vendors in the back room, they're all screaming, I got to get to Walmart, I got to get down the street to, Publix or whatever it is, they're big clients, and your receiver's back there trying to check in 3, 4, 5 vendors at the same time, and it's really busy, and they're looking at the scan gun, and the vendor's calling out numbers to them. What are the chances that your receiver just might make a mistake or be able to be taken by a vendor who is fast counting? So this goes on in your stores on a daily basis. So I challenge you to go back to your stores, walk in the back room, and watch your receivers checking in a vendor. If the vendor calls out the name and the numbers of the product while your receiver is standing with the gun punching in numbers and not really looking at the product, you want to reverse that and make sure that the vendor is not allowed to count. The receiver looks at and physically counts the merchandise. Anyway, that's just an introduction to what goes on in your stores every day. But the impact to the bottom line of vendor errors and mistakes is larger than we think. Now, I want to set this up front. The goal of this whole presentation is to help prevent errors, not to find theft. Too many people say, I'm going to find vendor stealing, I'm going to try and catch a thief. That's not what it's about. It's not about catching the bad guy. It is about preventing errors. And if you go about teaching your receivers to prevent errors, not worry about trying to catch someone stealing, you'll be a lot better off, and the lessons that are going to be learned here will stick much, much better, I believe. One of the companies that presented last year at NGA was Festival Foods up in Wisconsin. Joe Laffenberg, wonderful fellow, and he shared this information at NGA. In 2015, in their 20 stores, the dollar value of discrepancy in 20 stores in 2015 was $444,000. The single store average was $22,000 just in 20 stores. Now, these are larger volume stores, but still $444,000. The overages, yes, there were overages, were $147,000. 33% were overages. Single store average $7,364. The shortages totaled a whopping 67% of the total, $297,000, $14,000, almost $15,000 per store. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if they had not had a program in place to prevent errors and had not been tracking this and preventing it, that company would have lost last year, bottom line, would have lost $297,000 at the back door. Now, these are larger stores. They have 20 of them. If you are a single store operator or have 1 or 2 or 3 stores and your average sales are like $100,000, it's going to be less. The losses are going to be less, dollar-wise. But the impact to your bottom line percentage-wise is huge. Where else can you increase your sales by $297,000? So preventing losses is really, really critical, and this is one way to do it. Another thing that they do at Festival is they track the discrepancies, the errors. They track them, and they look at the discrepancies. What type of errors? Not on truck was usually was the number one reason given for errors. Left on truck, $82,000. Just, oops, I'm sorry, I left it on the truck. Now, was that theft attempt? Was it error? It doesn't matter. It's the bottom line. It comes out of your pocket. So $82,000. Oops, I just left it on the truck. Mispicks, $81,000 in mispicks. This is 20 stores over a year. Imagine what the impact is at your company. And they also track driver discrepancies. Driver 1, we took the names out and put the company in there. I mean, took the company name out and put the driver 1, driver 2, so we could see where the errors came from, whether it be Frito-Lay, Coca-Cola, whomever. And if you have large discrepancies by one company, it's a good bet you really need to sit down and talk with that company and say, hey, you got some drivers there we have a problem with. They obviously can't count. They have other issues, but we need for them to be more accurate. Not they're trying to steal. We need for them to be more accurate. So tracking driver discrepancies is also critical. But anyway, this is what a vendor error program can do for you. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So, top 10 things you need to have, top 10 recommended best practices. Number 1, have written policies. I know it sounds silly, but what I do, Mark and I've worked together before. What I do is I go into companies, be it 1 store, 10 stores, 20 stores, and I look at everything in the store from the front end, the back door. I look at departments and try and help companies with profitability. And probably the biggest single issue that I find regarding DSD is companies do not have written guidelines or written policies to follow when it comes to DSD receiving. So number one, have written policies. If you have it, where is it? Are people reading it? Is it in a manual somewhere? It can be something simple, just 10 things. I call it a vendor code of conduct. Products must be received during posted receiving hours by approved vendors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Very simple. Very, very simple. But then, here's the key. Put it up at the back door. Put it poster size. Stick it at the back door. That way, if your vendors aren't following the policies, all the receiver has to do is point to that sign and say, hey guys, see number 4 over there? Please do number 4 for me. Therefore, there's no yelling, screaming, hollering. I didn't know that was a policy. It's all there. So have a policy and post the policy. Number 2, this sounds simple also, but this is something I see all the time. Lock your doors. Receiving doors must be locked when the receiver is not in view of the door. It eliminates the temptation for people taking out their credits, vendors taking out their credits, coming in and out. You can't treat that like a revolving door. Put a lock on it. If you have a crash bar, lock the crash bar, or not lock it. What's the word? If you have a delayed egress, make sure it's secured. But close and secure that back door when that receiver is not around. Please do that. Number 3, CCTV. I've said this at the other 2 presentations as well. The best practice here is have CCTV and have it where cameras are over your receiving area. These are 2 shots of some people I've gone to where it's very clear. They've got a big back room. It's a perfect scenario. You can see everything that's going on in that receiving area. All too often, though, this is what I see. Yes, they've got a camera at this particular company I was at over the receiving area, but they've got so much garbage stacked up in front of it. If a receiver is trying to check in a vendor and you guys want to go back and look at that process, you can't. It's covered up there. It doesn't do any good to have that camera there. You just spend all this money for this camera system to be able to look at checks and balances, and it's useless. And at this particular company, yes, they had a camera back in the back, and it was over the receiving area, but it was so bad, so blurry, so dark. I challenge anyone to get any value from this whatsoever. In this particular case, however, the heavy-set young man has the gun, and you saw on the video where the Frito-Lay vendor was pulling down boxes. They weren't being opened, and the eyes of the receiver never left the gun. So that's why having a CCTV system where you can use it to see what's going on at your back is a back door is very, very important. Back door or front door, either one. Fourth best practice, create a designated receiving area. All too often, you walk in a back door and you'll have 3, 4, 5 vendors back there, or there'll be products staged in different places. In order to get control of the back door and to help your receivers, let me say that again, to help your receivers do a good job, create a designated receiving area in the back room. Let's take this back room. This was in Alabama. You've got a back room here, and you've got a wide open space, and vendors, some of them are going to the left, some are going to the right, and you got 2 or 3, 4 or 5 vendors in there. This is what I recommend you do. Take white paint, yellow tape, yellow paint, something, and draw a box. Now, you can have 2 boxes if you want, or 1 box. And then you set a rule on those policies we talked about that says, 1 vendor or 2 vendors allowed in the back room with product at a time. The vendors are to come in, drop their stuff in the yellow square, and then the receiver can go over and say, are you ready to be checked in? The vendor says yes. They begin the check-in process. If the vendor says, oops, as they're checking, oops, I left it on the truck. I'm sorry, I left merchandise on the truck. Well, obviously, Mr. Vendor, you were not fully prepared when you came in. Take your stuff back out, get back in line, get the stuff off the truck and bring it in. And that way, because I don't want to hold up the other folks while you have to run out to the truck and get that merchandise. So you other fellows, come on in so someone else comes into the box. This helps prevent errors from vendors, make sure they're ready. And one company actually said, if a vendor brings in product to the store and doesn't drop it in that square first or leaves that square before being checked in, they actually say that merchandise is mine. So you control the process by controlling where they are staged for the check-in process. That's the first step. And let me show you why this is so important. I have a video of this, but I can't show it, but I'm going to explain it to you. The circle there represents a bread vendor who had already come in the morning, checked, and saw how much product he needed to bring in. Backstory, he actually needed 2 bread trays. But as you can see, he is only bringing in 1 bread tray. What he does, that's his backstock. There's 2 bread trays there. He actually walks to that point right there on the video, and then you'll see him take one of those bread trays out of the circle and put it with the product he just brought in, and this particular company paid for the same bread twice. This particular vendor admitted to well over $100,000. One man, $100,000 in bread. And I can tell you this from 35 years experience. If someone admits to $100,000, it's a good chance it's 3 to 5 times that. So having a square where you control the product, do not check in a vendor beside their backstock. Don't check them in on the floor. Check them in a neutral area. Number 5, one vendor at a time. Like I said earlier, you could say 2 vendors at a time with product if you want. If you've got a big store, usually 1 will work. And this is an actual video from from one of the companies with the Loss Prevention Share Group. He took this and he said, I don't believe this. You've got 1 vendor here, 2 vendors, 3 vendors, 4 vendors in the back room, and they all brought in product. You've got this poor receiver here trying to check in this guy, this gal, this guy, this gal. I don't care how good you are. There's no such thing as multitasking in a back room. You cannot do it. So have 1 vendor or 2 vendors with product in the back room at a time. If you allow multiple vendors in, then you're going to have possible confusion, fast counting. They're going to get the receiver shaken up, and it's also stressful for the receiver. Very, it's like being a, controller at an airport, air traffic controller. You're trying to handle all this traffic with all these people yelling, hey, I got to go, I got to go, I got to go. It's not fair. So 1 vendor or 2 in the back room at a time with product. Number 6, only a receiver counts, like I showed you just a moment ago. Oops, sorry, hang on, sorry. Yeah, only the receiver counts. If you allow the vendor to count the product to the receiver, the vendor can say numbers that he wants. He wants the receiver to nod their head with, like a little dog in the back of the car. Just nod their head. Yep, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. And boom, that's what they key into the gun. That, yep, I got it, when really in front of them is less product than that. So again, go back to your stores, or go to your cameras, walk in your back room, and see the interaction between the vendor and the receiver. Like, I'm talking Frito-Lay, bread, someone like that. The receiver's looking at the gun, punching in numbers, and the vendor is picking up bread trays, downloading boxes, open them up real quick, and the vendor is doing all of the counting and all the, I've got this, I got that, I got 6 of 49, I got 742, and the receiver is just punching in numbers. That is dangerous. Please, number 6, only the receiver counts. 7, baler and compactor use. Vendors should never, ever, ever be able to use your baler or compactor. Repeat that. Never use the baler or compactor. I was at a company in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was there I'm in the back room doing a survey, and the vendor walks up and asked me actually to get out of the way. Said, "Excuse me, I need to get to the baler." So the vendor opened up the baler and threw product in the baler. I had a heart attack. I went over to the receiver and said, "This guy just threw product in." "Oh yeah, I know, that's Joe. I've already gotten his credits written up, so I allowed him to throw it away." I said, "Well, if Joe's allowed to throw them away after he's checked in, what's to stop him from throwing away before you've checked them out?" He said, "Oh, Joe would never do that." In the immortal words of Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. I trust everyone, but why leave a door open? Why leave a register door? You would never leave a register open. "Oh, I trust everyone. I'm going to just leave that register open. So if someone, I know no one will mess with it." You would never leave a till open. So lock the baler and compactor to prevent things from happening. Don't have them throw away their own boxes. Don't have them throw away anything. There have been, my gosh, I can't count the number of times I've gotten calls from people saying, we opened up a bale of cardboard, and in it we found magazines, we found chips that were crushed, we found bread, where vendors didn't want to give credit, so they just throw it away. And here is an actual video that was sent to me of a vendor that is supposed to be giving credit to the stores for all this merchandise. When they didn't get credit, they wondered why. They went back and looked. The vendor threw away all of this perfectly good merchandise that he didn't want to give the store credit for. That's money. That's your bottom line. That's just money out the door. So, number 8, control vendors, sales reps, and helpers, no loitering. Now, this is the same picture I showed you earlier. So you've got, these are 4 vendors. You've got 4 vendors in here. These 4 vendors are also going to be walking around your store, looking at different stuff, handling different displays, the helpers and whatever. At some point, I know we want to give them complete latitude to help us. That's very, very, very important. But you don't know who these folks are. You know they're probably from the community. They're good people. But you don't necessarily know who they are. One of the companies that put on the presentation said he had a problem with a vendor and went back and got a criminal record of that vendor that was caught stealing from him. Retail theft, order protection, open alcohol in vehicle, order protection, retail theft felony, retail theft misdemeanor, and he was a vendor walking around the store, complete autonomy, carte blanche to do whatever he wants to do. So if you see a bread vendor and he's over in the beer aisle, or you see a beer vendor and he's over, in another part of the store, and they're not buying snacks or buying product or whatever like this, there's nothing wrong with going up and asking him, "Excuse me, what's going on? What's happening? Can I help you?" Also, several years ago, I was with Harris Teeter Supermarkets, and a manager called me. He said, "I've got a lot of charges for this 900 sex line, and I'm doing an investigation. Don't know who it is, but I'll call you back and let you know." "Yeah, sure." So he called me back a few days later and says, "Found out who's doing the 900 sex line, and it's our vendor. He's coming in the morning, like at 6 o'clock in the morning. He's going up to the phone at the front end, picking up the phone and dialing the 900 sex line and doing whatever, and then leaving the store." And the manager said, and I swear this is true, guys. This is absolutely true. The manager said, "But Joe, he's a good old boy. I guess he's just, I don't know what's wrong with him. I'll talk to him, but he's a good old boy. I just would hate to see him lose his job over something silly like this. We're only talking a couple of $100. I asked the manager, I said, "Mr. Manager, let me ask you a question. When you're there at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're busting your butt to get things open and done and working and things like this. How often do you think about going over to a 900 line and staying on the phone for 20 minutes at a time? Is that normal? He said, no, it's really not normal. I said, exactly. And this particular store had a female receiver. So in light of that, the manager said, now that you put it like that, I think it's a good idea that he's not in our store anymore. So vendors, yes, we want to give them carte blanche to help us as much as they possibly can while they're in the store. But at the same time, we should not give them carte blanche to walk all over the store, and should watch them, make sure when they go out, they have receipts as well, just like we would a regular employee. Number 9, no free samples. We've all said this. We have a policy about no free samples, but has anyone ever said why we don't allow free samples? Part of the reason is samples are used to butter up receivers. Hey, here's this, here's that, no problem. And it's harder for the receiver to then enforce those policies that we put up on the wall. Remember that? We put them up on the wall. We agreed to them. It's much harder for the receiver to enforce those policies if that vendor is giving him stuff. Years ago, I worked for Revco drugstores, and I walked in the back room one morning, and the receivers over at this table, and there's all this product on the table, miscellaneous product all over the place, chips, cookies, bread. And I said, her name is Lucy. I said, Lucy, what's all this product? She goes, it's my birthday. I said, that's great. Happy birthday. Again, what's all this product? And she said, well, it's my birthday, and these are presents that all the vendors gave me. Well, guys, I asked Lucy, I said, where do you think this product comes from? She goes, oh, this is extra product they have on their truck. Guys, vendors are financially accountable for every single piece of merchandise that's on their truck when they leave their warehouse. In the morning, they are checked out. That vending company knows exactly what's on their truck when they leave their warehouse or distribution center. So let me ask you, where do they get free samples from? What I have been told by vendors is they get free samples by shorting company X, and then they give those samples, those quote-unquote free samples, to company Y to butter them up. That's what I've been told. So therefore, recommend do not allow samples to be given out to anyone, and have a policy about that. Number 10, audit and inspect. What is it? Only inspect what you audit. I don't know how that phrase goes. Yes, inspect what you expect. So the vendors, the receivers, are many times, you may be front door or you may be back door, but let's say you're back door. That receiver is receiving back there and you never see them. You don't know what they're doing. Well, it's important to, you want to know what your deli bakery manager is doing. You want to know what your meat manager is doing. You want to know what your produce manager, what your other department heads are doing. I think of receiving as a department. And so you really need to inspect what they're doing. Not to find something wrong, but maybe you can help them be better. Or maybe they'll show you something they're doing that maybe your other store should be doing, or something like that. But we have included a sample checklist for you, receiving checklist, and that's on the download. But I highly recommend you set up a policy to go back and audit at least 3 vendors a week, 3 audits, 3 deliveries a week, minimum, at least 3 a week. Whether it's your assistant manager, your store manager, but audit 3 deliveries a week. Number 1, it'll help keep the receiver on his toes, but 2, when you see the receiver doing a really, really, really good job, my gosh, everyone loves a pat on the back. And to know that you even care that they're back there doing this, whether it's a he or a she at the back door, and they know that you care enough to come back there, audit what they're doing, give them a pat on the back when they do it well, everyone loves that. Highly recommend you do it. Now here's a video to show you about DSD auditing from using videos. So when I go in, I do a physical audit. I walk in the back room to see if a receiver knows what the policies are. And this particular receiver was Luis. And Luis said, I open every case. Mr. Bill, I open every single case. I'm the best receiver in the company. I downstack every bread tray. I know my job. I'm the best receiver in the company, and I make the vendors follow the policies. That's great. Then I went to the owner and said, show me the video of the day before I got there. Same receiver, Lewis. As you can see, he's scanning the bread as the vendor pulls out the tray. Nothing's being counted. Luis, the receiver, he isn't counting. He's just scanning one item. They're not, the vendor's not even lifting up the bread trays. They're not even making a pretense of counting in product. Nothing. And this is Luis, the best receiver in the company, who knows the right thing to do. He also said, Mr. Bill, I make vendors open every single case. Well, he scanned the outside of the box, which is an error. And watch this. The vendor opens the case. Yes, he does. Watch this. 1, 2, 3. Whoops. Nope. All right, count this one. All right, 1, 2, 3. Boom. So Lewis said, I make every vendor open up the cases. They do that, but he's not even counting. And when you scan the outside of the box of a Frito-Lay box, we all know that Frito-Lay reuses those boxes. So you might be scanning and you're getting Cheetos when you're getting something else. So video auditing is absolutely, one more time, absolutely critical to making sure that everything that goes on in that back room that should be going on is going on. Not to catch someone doing something wrong. If you do a video audit and they do everything right, you go up to them and say, hey, I did a video audit of the receiving process, and the way you check that Frito-Lay vendor in or that Bimbo vendor in, phenomenal, great job, super job, keep it up. You just told them two things. Number one, you gave them a pat on the back. Number two, you're letting them know, I care about what you're doing. Lewis, obviously, was a bit disgruntled when I talked with him, but obviously he told everyone one thing and did something else. And when I showed this to the owner about had a heart attack. He's got 5 stores, and the reason I was there helping him is because he had large losses. Guess where a lot of his losses came from? So I breezed through those very quickly, and I was thinking I wouldn't have enough time, but I went through them very, very, very quickly. But these are the top 10 best practices in the industry. They will be on the FMS Solutions page and YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type in FMS Solutions. This presentation will be up there along with the one on on front-end best practices, as well as shoplifting prevention best practices. And also those documents I talked about are available on your GoToWebinar control panel, if you can see that. And if you need help with your profitability or finding out where your profit issues may be, your front end, your back door, your department heads, that's what I do. I come in, I help companies. Lastly, if you're not a member of a share group, either the NGA share group, if you're a member of NGA, or the Harold Lloyd Loss Prevention share group, if you're not a member of either one of those two groups, I say you're missing the boat. These are phenomenal opportunities to get information like the 3 webinars that we've shared with you over the past few weeks. And if you have any questions, let me know. Other than that, I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much.